Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the checkout webinar hosted by nShift. I'm joined here by my team member, Josh Barber. Josh is located in Birmingham. He's joined nShift about a couple of months ago, but comes with a broad experience working with merchants and retailers from the agency side of this world. Especially lots of experience working with platforms, BigCommerce, Shopify, amongst others. So I'm very happy to have you on board, Josh, joining me here today in the webinar. My name's Erik Meyer, located in Sweden, the VP of Solution Consulting, been part of nShift for the last 8 years. Before that, a logistics background. And here at nShift, been working with our new and existing customers around our post-purchase offering. So welcome to today's webinar. Before we kick off, just want to remind everybody that this is part of a series that we're rolling out. We started yesterday with the deliver part of our offering, hosted by Greg. Today, Josh and myself will walk through the checkout experience. Tomorrow we have track, and then rounding off on Friday with our returns management. And these are the 4 pillars of nShift's delivery management and experience platform offering. Also, a high-level overview, nShift's 4 pillars, they lie on our broad carrier network, and we have great synergies between the products and also with our broad carrier network. The data between the systems, from the carriers and back to you as a customer, that is where the synergies of nShift actually lies. Today we'll be focusing on the checkout, but not only just the nShift checkout, we'll also talk a little bit about what happens before you enter the checkout, and Josh, with his experience, will guide you through that. The key learnings of the webinars, it's 3 different areas, and hopefully tonight when you go to sleep, you'll have good food for thought and can dream about how we can simplify the checkout process. We'll give you good tips to reduce cart abandonment and also talk around techniques to increase the customer satisfaction at checkout.
And to touch on that point around, it's not just the nShift checkout and checkout in general. When we're talking about these key points, optimizing and reducing that cart abandonment rate and optimizing conversion rate, we also have to think about the whole customer journey. So what marketing channel are they? Is a customer coming into the site? What are their expectations? What does the home page do? What does the category page, product page, does the product page communicate information around not only the product, but delivery messaging, potential payment gateways, and estimate delivery? And then does that match when a user gets to checkout and when they start entering their details, delivery options are shown, the payment options shown, is that information there so that we're not losing customers when they go back potentially to try and find that information? I think a great example of that is like many customers lose, many merchants lose customers because they've got to the delivery section and it just says standard and express, but with no information on what that means from an ETA point of view. So then they jump to like a delivery information page, which is just a hurdle that we just don't want to be dealing with as even end customers ourselves. And we've had many clients over the years used many different techniques to try and solve these problems or try and improve their checkout. I think I had one great example of a customer go deep diving into search results that they were getting in Google search console around what people were searching. Were they searching like brand name delivery and stuff, looking for additional information that was more around the services and rather than the products, and where they were missing information? And then also talking to their customer service team around what are the most like inquiries they get and what questions they have and how can they add that information to various points throughout their e-commerce journey. So product pages, category pages, and the cart checkout ultimately to reduce that friction. And I think it's also when we do projects like this around reducing cart abandonment rate and simplifying the checkout, I think we also have to like acknowledge what works. And also if we can on the stuff that does work, reinforce it. If there's a great delivery option that always gets chosen, or let's make sure we're displaying that and everyone's happy with understanding that today.
Thank you, Josh. And before we kick on, we wanted to ask a quick question to the audience. So poll time. So what is your biggest challenge in checkout right now? And the different options being high cart abandonment rates, difficulty personalizing checkout, or the lack of flexibility and tools for experimentation. So we'll give you a couple of seconds to answer that. And while I wait for the answers to come in, I also want to remind everyone that we have a Q&A section. So please shoot any questions you have. And if time permits, we'll answer them in the end. And if there's no time, we'll make sure to answer them via email. Let's see if we can get some results.
I can already see some results coming in. I'm going to be closing the poll soon and share the results. Here we go.
Perfect. All right.
Ooh,
50%.
surprises us.
Yeah, it surprises us there. So 50%, so half of you say lack of flexibility and tools for experimentation. And that's maybe a positive thing because hopefully in the coming 15 minutes, we can talk around that and also showcase how nShift can help you with that. And then it's a tie between high cart abandonment and difficulty personalizing checkouts. But very good to hear. Thank you everyone for your answers. We shall move on and hopefully answer some of those questions. But a bit like Josh was into, and that's the view we have as well. We're here to talk about nShift checkout, obviously, but also acknowledge what the checkout journey starts way beyond. And I always take an example of brands putting a lot of money into socials, ads, etc., getting their customers to their website. And take an example of an outdoor brand talking around eco-friendly sustainability. Go into their socials, it's beautiful, it's nature, it's mountains, it's oceans, etc. And that same story continues when you go to their website. It's all about how this jacket or garment is produced and how beautiful it is and how it can save the world. But when you come into the checkout page, suddenly you're met with a total different story. There's not anything around, and especially if we're talking about delivery options, there's no information. Is this a sustainable option? Is this an express option? Whatever it is, but it's not following that same branding message that a lot of companies put into way before coming to the checkout. So and that's a challenge we see speaking to our existing customer base, but also to prospects. How can we have the same story and how can nShift help customers continue that story? And that's where nShift checkout really can help. And that's what we want to acknowledge as well, that it's a lot around the branding, the customer experience, as much as it is around the operational part of it, where it comes to reducing costs, but at the same time, making sure that what am I showing to the consumer is actually following my whole brand message. So I usually take that outdoor gear as an example. It's not a specific brand, but I think that's what we see as a big challenge and holding some customers back from making big changes in the checkout.
Yeah, and talking on those like struggles to make those big changes in the checkout, I think we have to acknowledge the SaaS elephant in the room with the big e-com platforms like a BigCommerce, a Shopify, maybe all stores to a point, is that these checkouts are very locked down. In BigCommerce, there is a possibility go and build your own checkout, but the amount of development hours required to build something like that is quite steep. But essentially, what you're trying to achieve in checkout's a little no gain. But I think we also need to take the positives of these SaaS checkouts, of like a BigCommerce and a Shopify, is that they've been like tested more than any other checkout in the world because of the amount of merchants and customers. If you take, like a Gymshark is one customer on Shopify checkout that's doing ridiculous numbers of orders a second. Well, they're using Shopify's checkout near enough as it comes out of the box, and so is the mom and pop store down the road that does 1 to 2 orders a week. And I think we do need to always be positive around what does work, and BigCommerce and Shopify are very well tested, but there are limitations, and we need to be able to, especially maybe not as much in the UK market, but maybe in the wider Europe market, where in the UK, we're very much happy to accept standard and express delivery as options and not know anything about what courier extends dates. But we have seen some really good success stories of people putting in nShift checkout in the UK market and informing users of the carrier estimated delivery dates, and even giving like more information to choose from. And they've seen higher conversion rates and actually a shift in what carriers get used, because certain customers, and I think we all have this, have a particular carrier that they like, or mainly just carriers that they probably don't like and the rest are okay with. And I've seen people just actually close contracts and stuff with certain carriers because they just don't, the customer base didn't want to use them. It's really good. And that's when we're talking about like optimizing the shipping options for your customers as well as for your operations. And then looking at payment options is something we always see. What I always was trying to tell our merchants in my previous role was that offer the payment methods that match your audience, and do not try and limit yourself payment options. Why? Because you're not willing to take the hit of an American Express transaction, an Apple, an Amazon Pay, or a PayPal. If someone's able to check out with their preferred payment option, they will check out, and that extra 3% or 2% compared to your normal credit card, you would rather have the sale. And then once they're in your ecosystem, hopefully they're in your marketing ecosystem, then we can convert the second and third and start making up those percentages lost by those expensive payment options. And who doesn't like just flying through a checkout because we can use PayPal, or Klarna, an Amazon Pay, an Apple Pay, a Google Pay.
An interesting point you said there as well around the different markets with different preferred options, and rightly so. I'm being in the Nordic market, I think we're obsessed with maybe showcasing the exact carrier, and that maybe looks a bit different in the UK and the rest of the world, or not rest of the world, but maybe other European countries. So it's like you said, optimizing the shipping options, and sometimes that's also, or sometimes that quite often we see customers who wanting to enter new markets having the struggle to actually make the changes on the fly without, heavy IT resources. So that's definitely something we see quite often, having the full flexibility. And that goes back maybe to the poll question as well, where we see the lack of flexibility. So where nShift really can help our customers grow, and I think it's quite often overseen. Going into a new market, it's not just about, new contracts with carriers. It's also how do we showcase them, how do we make them available, and how do we then optimize them along the journey. So very interesting to hear that part as well, Josh. And I think, Josh, you had an example of a customer who offered both standard and express. Do you want to give a little background on that one?
Yeah, of course. It's one of my, I'm not going to name and shame them because I think that's a bit unfair, but it's one of my preferred electronic brands that has a deep, like, direct-to-consumer website. It's on some headless architecture. Doesn't really matter what it was built on. But my favorite thing was always that when you got to the delivery options, was that standard delivery free, say it was 3 business days, and it would be express, like £14. For 2 business days. So as an end consumer, I'm looking at that going, I'm not paying an extra £14 for the chance or the ability for it to come 1 day sooner. And if I was consulting with these guys, I would probably suggest that they even remove Express and look at the numbers and start digging into the analytics of these options and the pricing of these options to if it actually makes meaningful sense both for them as a merchant and to their end consumers, because I would never select Express when it's going to save me a day and it's going to cost me an extra £15. Maybe in some environments that might be fine. Maybe it's big ticket purchases and we're looking at furniture. But even then, I have a client that sells furniture next day and does free next day delivery, but they've built their ecosystem around them. So everyone has different journeys and different expectations, but we all need to optimize it for our consumers. And if you're able to customize it, do A/B testing, and actually drill down through all your configurations of like what your checkout has, if that's payment options, shipping options, what fields you're asking for. My favorite is whenever I get asked for title, it's no online store needs to know I'm a Mr. or a Mrs. or whatever. Like, it doesn't make any difference. No courier cares. Like there's no need for that information. So it's about switching on like repeat info entry and stuff. Like we can just make everyone's lives easier.
Yeah.
Less friction means more conversion.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, and that's what we're speaking to as well, where nShift comes in, we're actually at the end of the checkout. But before that, where you're gathering information, I think that's also something we wanted to highlight here. The journey starts so much previously. And one thing, obviously, we also, when we're speaking to customers or prospects or in general, is also continue that messaging across the board. If on your product page you're offering sustainable options or next day delivery, but once you hit the checkout page, your promise is something different. That's also where we see, you know, customers, all right, not maybe trusting that site and going elsewhere as well. So keeping in mind that whole journey, what you're promising in the start is also what you need to promise at the end from a consumer point of view. And then we always have to remember, of course, the operational side behind it. And that's where the checkout also really plays a big part, is that what I'm showcasing is also, I need to keep that promise. But we see that struggle quite often when we're speaking to customers, that the sort of synergies between a product page versus the checkout versus actually shipping the product, those are three different elements and not being tied together. And that's something we wanted to highlight. And that goes into the optimizing shipping options. And then also what Josh, you were saying, the repeated info entry, asking for information that isn't necessary at a certain stage, is just where we see a conversion killer, really. But then again, that's also different markets have different streams, and you in the audience, you know your consumers best, and that's where nShift checkout can really help. The flexibility of testing and moving around and seeing what fits your customer base the best.
Speaking on nShift checkout, I think it's time to jump into it.
Yeah, so
Benefits
if
of
you
it.
look at the actual nShift checkout, so what is nShift checkout really? We haven't touched upon that if we're until now, but it's really giving you as a merchant or a retailer the flexibility to own the delivery options that you're showcasing. So if you have contracts, let me say with 10 carriers and you're operating in 5 different markets, you want to be able to showcase those carriers and the delivery options in your checkout. But you also want to be in control. And I usually say that the best checkout is where you give the consumer the feeling that they're the ones choosing, but in reality, it's you as a retailer merchant. You optimize it in the best possible way that you're forcing the end consumer to choose what's best for you. So there's two sides to it. And the nShift checkout offers you a super friendly using GUI where you are in full control, meaning you can really drill down and optimize how you're showcasing a delivery option, what you're naming it, what the price is, what the different supporting text or badges, the look and feel around it. You're in full charge of that. And what we see here on the right-hand side is a snippet of the nShift checkout widget. And here the examples here are home delivery and parcel box, but that's up to you as a merchant. How do you want to display that? You can choose to show a carrier logo, the name, call it home delivery, or you can be super innovative and call it sustainable delivery, express delivery in the evening, whatever it is, depending on what the cart value, the cart price, where the end consumer is. There's so many options of what you can display and how you can display using the data you have of the actual carts. So nShift checkout gives you that full flexibility. And like all of nShift's products, we want you as a customer to be in full control. We're not going to gain anything if you need our help to optimize. We'll be there to guide you, but you're the one steering the wheel and actually working with the checkout to make it dynamic and flexible so you can increase your conversion and also save costs. I think those two parts are super important. We've spoken about, you know, leading up to the checkout. We've spoken about the GUI, how you can do the configuration yourself, but equally important, what we wanted to highlight, and that's maybe also if you go into different markets, is how you actually deploy the checkout. And Josh mentioned that in the beginning. Of course, different platforms will have different limitations, and that's why nShift, we want to offer our customers flexible ways of how to actually deploy the checkout. And what we mean by deploying the checkout is how it will actually look in the front end. So I, as an end consumer, whilst in the checkout, how does it look? How do the delivery options, how are they displayed for me? nShift offers a widget, out of the box widget. You can change certain things to it, but it's ready to go. And that's a nice preferred option that a lot of our customers want to go for. We also have a headless version, and what we mean by that is that you have the strong backend, you have the possibilities to configure the checkout, but you're just using our APIs and fetching certain information, and how you're displaying it on your end is really up to you. And both are good options. The widget is a nice, stylish widget, and with headless, you have free hands, and you can build anything you really want and display the delivery options however you wish to. In the beginning, the first picture didn't mention it, but of course, super important for you, the audience, and also nShift is the whole ecosystem. We understand that our customers work in several different systems. It could be e-com platforms, ERP, WMS, OMS, etc., etc. So the whole partner network is a super important component for nShift as well. And that's where we have certain partner plugins ready to go, checkout connections, supporting many of our different platforms. And last but not least, a way to go is through a payment provider. Josh explained as well, like equally important to having to optimizing your shipping options is also optimizing your payment methods. And equally, payment methods are an important part of the nShift ecosystem, as it is for you listening to this webinar as well. And that's also a possibility of having the nShift checkout integrated into certain payment providers. So there's two aspects of it, of the simplifying the checkout experience, is both configuration and also how you deploy it. And going over to some key functionalities of the checkout, we're not going to list every feature and every functionality because there are so many, but we've highlighted some of the features here, and we won't even go through all of them here, but I wanted to highlight a few of them. And we've spoken about the messaging going from, ads, socials, all the way to website into the checkout. And that's why it's so important for us to give you, customer, the freedom of customizing your delivery option. Carrier XYZ doesn't have to be displayed as carrier XYZ. It can be displayed in any different way. Like we mentioned, express free shipping delivered to your doorstep next day. That could be the title, what you're displaying, but behind that, you're having a real carrier service. And that's what we mean by customized delivery options. Using nShift checkout widget, for instance, you get out of the box badges, and badges are a powerful way of how to visualize what that delivery option actually is. If it's a sustainable delivery option, you might want to add some green leaves or a green badge, or if it's express delivery, a red tag, something that highlights it and really makes it stick out, and also use that as a way to maybe force your end consumers to choose a specific delivery option over another one. But once again, what we're trying to say here is that you are in full control, and nShift has the tools for you to remove that friction of not having the freedom to modify whatever you want in your checkouts.
And I think throughout this webinar, we've spoken about changes, optimizations, and things that require some kind of input from either a developer in a traditional sense or something like that. The nShift checkout gives that control to a non-developer. So it's like the interactive test widget is, you can go and configure all the settings, view it on the right-hand side, enter like what postcode or any configuration set, so you can view it how an end customer view it on the front end. So it gives you that nice beta test and make sure it all works. And then when we're talking about what shipping options should we offer, or we want to try this new shipping method, or with the A/B testing tools we've got built in, you can make it so that only a percentage of users see that new option, so you can make sure it works. And it's even a good way of like testing if it works past the checkout, if you make sure that the logistics department can handle the new, express delivery or evening delivery options. So I had the client really happy that they could quickly change something when one of their carriers went bust, and had to like adjust delivery estimate times, remove a certain option. So they was able to quickly do that like overnight or the next morning when it was sensible. Although they make quick changes that reflected what they were actually offering. So that was really useful for them.
Thank you, Josh. And I think, like I said, there's lots of different features. And after this webinar, you will get an email where you also have the possibility to book a demo where obviously one of our sales reps is more than happy to walk more in detail through those features and also talk to what kind of needs you have and where we can help you. But those were a few that we wanted to highlight. But no feature, no product is any good without true customer testimonials. So we wanted to have at least one in this webinar, and we picked Flying Tiger. Flying Tiger, as you can read here as well, had a vision that they wanted to start offering Pudo points, so pick up, drop off points in their checkout, which they had limitations with. And thanks to the nShift checkout, that was possible, and they were able to roll out adding Pudos in several markets. And the beautiful thing about that is that they could see a direct increase in their checkout conversions up to 20%, which I think is fantastic numbers. And this is just one example of where the checkout can really help. Going back to the features and going back to what we've been talking about in this webinar, there are so many small tweaks you can make, and especially what Josh was mentioning around the A/B testing. There is, getting those delivery options in, and when you proactively start working with them, analyzing the data, tweaking, testing, that's really where you get the value out of the checkout, and that conversion rate can, sky's the limit. And also an important part that I'd like to remind everyone, also reduce costs because you're using the right delivery options. So to wrap up, the key learnings, we've touched upon certain areas, but we've talked about strategies to simplify the checkout process. And what we mean by that, of course, it starts earlier than the actual checkout. Tips to reduce cart abandonment with the strong features of nShift checkout, with the example of Flying Tiger, adding Pudos to their checkout, increasing the conversion, and then also different techniques on how you can increase the customer satisfaction at the checkout, and especially with nShift checkout, the flexibility and the messaging of what you're presenting to the customer is so important. We wanted to round off with a poll just to see what area of the checkout optimization would you focus on first? And there's so many, but there's 3 options to choose from. So would it be testing with A/B experiments? Would it be personalization through rules, or would it be simplifying the checkout process with a new interface? So I think the poll is open.
The poll is running indeed, Erik.
We'll give it a couple more seconds. Perfect. And Josh, you're correct. Before the webinar started, he said that the testing with A/B experiments would probably get the most votes, which it did. Half of you think that's what you would start and focus on. Second place would be simplifying the checkout process with a new interface. And then last place, but not least, the personalization through rules. And these are just a few examples. So thank you for answering them. And I think A/B testing definitely is a really strong feature that the nShift checkout can offer our customers, amongst many other. We have a minute left. Elena, I'm not sure if we have any questions or at this stage.
We had one question come in so far through the Q&A section, and that is, how does nShift support global markets?
Yeah, good question. And as in this webinar, I didn't go into the backend, but the whole backend is a do-it-yourself, and there is possibilities of how you set up your different markets. You can have one checkout for all your markets, or you can divide them into country-specific. And the reminder here is that the checkout strengths is also built on the broad carrier network that nShift has. Over 1,000 carriers supporting you to expand globally and around the world as well? That would be my short answer. So thank you for that question. Good. I think we're running out of time. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar and remind you as well that tomorrow we continue with track, and on Friday we round it off with returns. Thanks, Josh, for joining me. Thanks, Alina, for supporting, and thanks everybody for joining. Have a wonderful afternoon.